Hey there, Shotgun Anaconda here, and welcome to the second devlog for Velocity Noodle. Thank you to everyone that checked out the first one. I honestly expected 10 views, and when I'm writing this, it's over 500. It's crazy, thank you. For the new viewers, Velocity Noodle is a fun, speedy precision platformer where you teleport around and go really fast. Check it out on Steam if that interests you. So this time I wanted to show you guys my process for coming up with levels. Everything from sketch, building, QA, iteration and tiling it. Velocity Noodle isn't open world, instead it has individual levels, similar to Super Meat Boy or Dust Force. Every chapter has its own gimmick and each level builds on that and makes it more advanced. In this chapter the main gameplay part are these walls that disappear on touch and reset when you land on the ground. When I was doing this I was in a bit of a slump. I had a real hard time trying to come up with variations. I usually workshop my levels with the level editor, but this time I decided to start on paper. It works surprisingly well and the speed and flexibility of drawing lines helped out a lot. Sadly, I didn't record the sketching process, but this is the final sheet with a few different variations. I used most of them by now, but in this video I wanted to focus on this one. It's more complicated than the others and requires the player to hit these key objects without touching the ground and also opening up walls so he or she can reach the final one. As I mentioned before, I use Clickteam Fusion as my engine. I build the levels in separate frames and when I run it, I got code that saves all the objects and sprites to an array. The game then loads this array and builds everything on the different X and Y positions and lets the player do its thing. Instead of building the level start to finish, I usually start with the main puzzle. Since that's the main meat of the level, it's important to get that right. The rest of the level is just a build-up. In that build-up, we can either hint at what's coming or do simple variations just to build that muscle memory. What surprised me the most was I got it right quite quickly, and I think that's the real benefit of having done a solid sketch, because I really ironed out the most quirks and gameplay flow, and I just need to figure out the positioning and distance. With the main puzzle in place, we can build the rest. As I mentioned earlier, I want to hint to the player what's coming up. The first thing the player sees are these rolling cogs with a key object in the middle. Straight away we are teaching the player that he has to dash or jump through the danger. It looks simple, but do not underestimate the fact that players will forget abilities or strategies as they play the game, especially if it's been a while since they've done something. I tried it out and it works quite well. I let grey box levels marinate for at least a day before I start tiling. And when I come back the next day and played it, I felt that it was a bit too short and not dynamic enough. So I raised the main puzzle, which created this area in the middle, which let us do another micro tutorial. This time I'm teaching the player that she will need to remove walls and progress without landing on the ground. I also put in this quickly lit boost in the end as a breathing moment and because it feels good to be lifted into the air. With the level in place, I start placing tiles. I place these sprite objects which I call king tiles. At runtime these will then be turned into level sprites and I have an auto tiling code that will run through them and place the right directions. This chapter is set in a construction zone, so I have two different tile sets that I can place. Sadly, the level didn't end up having smaller platforms, so I can't show off some of the sprites, but I think you get the picture. I then place various decorations such as boxes, pipes, signs, and fences. All of the sprites aren't done yet, so I will have to come back in the future and make it even more pretty, but we can do a solid job with what we have for now. The purpose is twofold, partly is to make the level look good, but it's also to guide the player forward and show what's important in the level. We really don't want the player to get stuck. Once again, I play the level regularly to see how it looks. And I'm really looking for empty zones or screens that look boring. I can cover these with different sprites or place particle objects just to fill the background. The zone before the puzzle looked really hollow, so I carved out a space and placed this big pillar and some various boxes and bottles and particle generators. It's all about distracting the player for a second until she gets to the next gameplay section. Last step, I place lights, and usually I can place sprites that generate their colored lights at runtime. But in this case, I also place clear light sources on the key puzzles just to highlight them. It's a small little trick that guides the player's eye. And that's it. I'm quite satisfied, the level plays great and the puzzle is fun. I will come back later to decorate some more, but it looks quite good in my opinion. If you're interested in Velocity Noodle, I would really appreciate if you could wishlist it on Steam. It helps out more than you know, since it shows Steam that people are interested in it and spreads it to more people. Wishlisting is free and I'll leave a link down below. Thank you for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.